Hello, you're watching Avenue X, and this is my final review on the recently fully finished airing Chinese drama, Three Body 三体. This drama is 30 episodes in total, and when it aired to about halfway point, I made my first impression video. In this final review, I'm gonna go through everything that is worth talking about of this drama adaptation of the famous Liu Cixin's sci-fi novel Three Body Problem, first book of the 3 books. You have been warned, this is gonna be one of the longest drama review video I make on any dramas to date on my channel. I will give this drama a 3 gold mine rating. Yay, from Avenue X. This review is gonna be divided into mainly 6 parts. 6 parts, that's the Chinese way of signaling it. The first one is gonna be focused on the visual audio production side of things, the hardware stuff. The second part will be talking more specifically about actors, characters, performance. The third part will be pointing out the difference between the story on paper and as a visual production. The fourth and fifth part will be tearing that apart more, focusing on what I think they've done not so well and could be improved on. Then the other part, obviously, is what they've done really well. Then the final thing will be a type of conclusion and the traditional ways of Chinese people doing things called 上价值, adding value onto things. So let's start with the first part, looking at Three Body as the 2020s Chinese contemporary drama, its pictures and its sound. Let's start with visual. If you've watched through this drama or maybe just a couple of episodes, it's very easy to spot that this drama's visual is done in more of a cinematic style than the typical drama style. On a very superficial level, its ratio is a very typical cinema ratio of 2.35. This is actually not unusual for Chinese drama now in 2023. We've seen it being done as early as 2018, 2017, such as Like a Flowing River. I remember clearly that drama did this, and I think they even used anamorphic lens if I haven't remembered wrong. This drama also uses lighting in a very cinematic way, and it's done by people who know what they're doing, and they are so trying to suggest with lighting, with color, the emotion of the characters. There are many very backlit shots and scenes in this drama. People in the foreground very dark, you almost cannot see their face detail to show you that the characters are in the dark. Usually you just don't see that in Chinese dramas. For example, the office lady type of dramas or romantic contemporary dramas, they're gonna lit everything like crazy. There are so many polyboards standing around them just outside of the frame to make all the actors look smooth and perfect. Whereas this drama, often there's like nothing used on the actor's face, not even one reflector. It adds to that harshness of things, the sharpness and contrast. And for the overall atmosphere of this story, it actually fits really well. It also masterfully uses light coming through different dark spaces, that classic effect where people look enlightened, holy, epic, and heroic. That is not a secret, not hard to do, but you have to have the intention to do it to set up your light looking like that, because they usually don't naturally look like that. This drama also uses color grading very, very carefully for each section of the story. Whatever the emotional atmosphere they want to create, they would really grade different part of the story with very different style. Usually for a more standard non-sci-fi, not so crazy a plot drama, for example, again, an office drama of people working contemporary life, you almost will have the whole drama graded to one color style and they're gonna stick with it. This drama, even with the same character in the same space, but because their mental sort of state is different, they will grade the color to that moment in that scene. When they go back in time in the 1960s and 70s, it also is different colors for different situation. When things are more bleak and less hopeful, you have a desaturated look of everything. When the female lead character enters the place where it's gonna change her fate and the fate of humanity, it becomes that yellow, green, warm, almost fairy tale-like, but also old movie-like, memory-like color. So this drama graded every scene based on its emotional sort of like value, if you want to look at it like that. From an interview that the director did, he mentioned for the post-production, just grading alone took them 4 months. I can safely tell you, usually for Chinese contemporary dramas, nobody would spend that much time grading a drama. So they have to do it shot by shot, pretty much, or scene by scene to design it and adjust things to make it subtly work for their purpose. There are definitely certain sequences that have been carefully planned, designed, mapped out, shot, and edited, such as the great shot during the episode 17 or 18, can't remember exact number, but old Ye Wenjie and the 1970s younger Ye Wenjie, with two different color schemes in the same physical space but crossing that much time, staring at each other. Then in the visual department, you will also look at production design. Without going into details, because I mentioned it a bit in the first video I've made, very good production design. Apart from, okay, the uniforms of all the generals and all the military people, because I think they can't use the real ones. They have to use a fake world setting ones for the American, for the European, for the everywhere in this world, like Africa and also China, like Asian, different defense consoles uniform, so bad. And when they have the whole thing on, it's okay, but there are a couple of scenes when Lin Yongjian's role is literally only wearing what's inside, like the summer uniform shirts that makes him look like a security guard. That definitely needs to get improved for the second series. The Hong'an Red Coast, the dish that's completely digital, space that they have to build, such as the control room, all the gadgets that's back in the 1970s, what it should look like. Those details are so well done. They even went as far as when there's a wide shot of the 2007 Beijing skyline, and you can see a tiny bit of the, at the time, still being built new Chinese CCTV, the pants. Because back in 2007, it hasn't completely finished yet. And they have to take the shot of current 2020s when the whole thing is already there, and then digitally erase it and put a unfinished version. It's tiny. You have to zoom, and to see that, and they bother to do that much work. Also in the visual department, considering this drama has so little a budget, they've done the special effect to the best you can hope for. Earlier on, it's mostly focused on the game part. Later, it is the epic episode of 古筝行动, the cutting of the boat thing. In the book, for the actual cutting of the boat, it's probably only less than a page describing what happened. The boat got cut, it falls onto the bank like a deck of cards. But for the drama, the actual operation took about half an hour for you to see from beginning to end. And adding the discussion part in the meeting room, the process of planning it and 大使 giving out that devil-like plan, it's another like 15 minutes or so. So honestly, it's a whole episode worth of content just focusing on that one operation. For anyone who's read this book before, you want to see that scene, and you want to see every possible detail that goes into the plan and execution of this thing, and finally how it resolves. And every necessary parts you hope a visual adaptation will give you, the drama gave you. They even bothered to film all the other scenarios while they were planning. This weapon, that weapon, it wouldn't work. It wouldn't work that way to convince all the audiences. The only way that you can have it work is with 大使's crazy but efficient plan. I think after you've watched the whole Operation 古筝, really there's nothing you can complain about this drama anymore. Even if this drama has other things it hasn't done perfectly, you'd forgive them. I was like biting my nails while I was watching that whole sequence. By this point, we've just talked about the visual, the half point of the first point of the 6th point. Yes! Then let's talk about sound. Sound often gets very ignored by people, particularly when they're watching dramas. For this drama, it got mixed really carefully. Again, at a cinema and film standard production level, they also took a couple of months to just mix this drama. So if all possible, right, watch this drama with headphones. It will give you a different soundscape. There's a lot of design, a lot of sound effect, a lot of natural environment effect, the things that goes with the music. Throughout this whole drama, you'll hear the same song having multiple versions written and designed, played by different instruments, having different styles. Some songs have multiple lingual version of the lyrics, so you can hear male version, female version, English version, Chinese version. A lot of essential moments and scenes have their specifically designed music. That is not something that often happens with dramas. Chen Xueran probably spent a lot of time working on it, because you can hear for different parts of the plot, same music, multiple versions gets written just for that one scene. And if you're very sensitive to these things, you can get very appreciative. And again, this is the type of extra effort that most audiences in China would just not care about. And for that, And then in the quality of the soundtracks and the music, I have nothing to complain about. It's so well written. There are so many great songs. They've already released the first volume that hasn't fully included all the tunes you've heard throughout the drama. This is really a lengthened film level of music design of things. Now, that concludes the first part of talking about it from the production side of things. Let's move on to the second part, actors, characters, performances. For everyone who's read Three Body, we have a in-function leading character, Wang Miao, played by Zhang Luyi. But then we also have an in-spirit and in setting up the whole universe of Three Body, the real main character, Ye Wenjie, in the drama version being played by Chen Jing and Wang Ziwen. Then you have the classic sidekick character, Shi Qiang, played by Yu Hewei, whose most important function actually is not in this book, but the second book. You almost don't have any, in classic sense, the definitive leading character. Also, on the paper, probably only Ye Wenjie, this role, has been written to the most interesting level. The whole story of her life is detailedly explained. And then Wang Miao is the type of role that really just is a tool. Even Shi Qiang, to a level, is also just a tool for the narrative. Then for the rest of the roles, they're all so functional. They almost have no personality, no clear imagery as individual persons at all. And one of the greatest things is the script manages to bring almost everybody to a different level of being a real human. In my first video, I talked about Wang Miao being a tool person, now being a real person, and Zhang Luyi is perfectly fitting. In the future, when I read this book, Wang Miao, the two words, my mind will see Zhang Luyi and see his styling, his hairstyle, his glasses, and the way he talks. Shi Qiang, Yu Hewei, also not gonna go into that anymore because I talked about it in the first video. Surprisingly suitable and good actor. For this drama, the couple of very memorable scenes comes completely from his improvisation, such as the two dancing part. The first one is when he got out of the restaurant and then joined all the old ladies or middle-aged ladies dancing the square dance. That's completely added by himself. Or in the last episode, when he jumps onto the pool table and started dancing with the two crazy scientists. These two things are completely his improvisation. Now that also when I read the book, when the name Shi Qiang jumps out, it's gonna be Yu Hewei's face. Then for the character Ye Wenjie, Chen Jing's performance, without a question. She's such a good actress, and she happens to be just like fit. Also Wang Ziwen vibe so well that you can believe, although they're actually physically not so similar and their height are very different, Wang Ziwen is much shorter than Chen Jing, you just don't have a problem of believing it's that woman growing older and then becoming her. I want to here emphasize a little bit more on Wang Ziwen's performance. She probably is one of the most doubted role apart from Yu Hewei as the main leading roles when they first got casted and announced, because previously she's been in many different dramas that are very far away from Three Bodies vibe, and Ye Wenjie is so essential. If she fails as a role, then the first series of the story fails. Because people haven't seen her, that side of her, therefore they are very worried about her performance. But then everyone, whether they've actually read Three Body or not, when they watch his drama, I've seen a lot of people's reactions. Everyone just is so captivated by her performance. And she just is so right. Because Ye Wenjie at the core is an idealist. Her pursuit of truth, science, and her ambition, and the important thing of her life really is her study, is her science, is her theories, is that pure pursuit of truth. Every other thing in her life actually is not that important, whether it's the husband or the children. Think about the process of her working in Red Coast up to the point where she pressed the button to send the signal. That could severely destroy her political and also her just like physical life at the time. She just wanted one answer. One proof that whether her theory is correct, the whole idea of if I send a signal out, whether the sun is going to give me 100 million fold back at the risk of destroying her life. That kind of person needs to have the stubbornness, that core of energy. Even though she's tiny, she's willing to stand against the world. And that's the most important character, particularly for the early stage of this role. Wang Ziwen captured that so well. And now, again, when you think about the young Ye Wenjie, when you read the book, you really just have her face now. We are just so lucky, honestly, that this role gets played by these two ladies. Then we have to talk a little bit about a couple of other roles that I totally didn't expect I'd get super touched by, such as Li Xiaoran's performance of the role Shen Yufei. If you've read the book, she is more of a tall person than Wang Miao in the first book. But after Li Xiaoran's performance, she becomes such a real person. She's so 3D-ized. And they've ironed out a couple of not so making sense things in the book to make her a very coherent person. And it's very easy to understand and explain why she would think about certain things that way and why would she do things. And then why eventually, she ended up like that. Together with her is the role her husband, played by Zhao Jian, Wei Cheng, the genius mathematician who can't do anything apart from math. He is even less of a character than Shen Yufei in the book. He's tool person's tool person, barely better than an ant in the narrative of the book. But this actor is a very method actor. His previous works with this director and with Zhang Luyi in Red, 红色, where he played a Japanese soldier. If you've watched the performance, you almost thought he's a Japanese guy who got hired by the crew. Because for the performance of that role, for this actor, he actually studied Japanese and learned speaking Japanese and then switched his accent, speaking Chinese with a Japanese accent more convincingly. For this role he's done, he also added a lot of details. He intentionally designed this role with an accent. He speaks dialect throughout this drama. He doesn't use Mandarin. I think he's one of the most surprising roles. If you've read the original book, you almost just don't expect anything to come out of this role. Almost everybody who's watched this drama and see his performance would say, we so didn't expect such a small role would be so well performed. A couple of foreigners in this drama, such as the actors who plays Evans, also Colonel Stanton, Colonel Mike, they are definitely above average of the foreigner roles in Chinese dramaland. If you watch a lot of Chinese dramas, you'll see how bad a foreign role gets written and performed. At least I think for this drama, they don't cause 出戏. They don't pull audiences out of the story. Just go back from a drink of water because we've only gotten 2 points down, 4 to go. So let's get into the third part of this video, talking about what is the difference between the drama adaptation and the first book of Three Body. Small, tiny differences, we're not going to mention them one by one because that's going to be crazy. But the essential differences that actually would affect a lot of story's narrative and how they link things together, there are things they've added that did not exist in the original story, such as the character Mu Xing, adding of her being able to bring out more of Pan Han's background story, what he did, what he can do, and how his role developed and linked with Shen Yufei and then Ye Wenjie and eventually his ending. We also have a new role, Xu Bingbing, who did exist in the first book, but she is mentioned by one sentence. In this drama version, she is an essential help on Shi Qiang's side to help him figure out the cases, gradually becoming actually a rather interesting role on camera. Then you also have did exist but actually is a different person, the role Chen Xue. In the book, she is the nuclear bomb girl who really doesn't have a name and you know nothing about her background story. She is just a bodyguard of Ye Wenjie. And in the drama version, they changed her. They made her the daughter of the younger sister of Ye Wenjie and actually gave her a background story of how she basically got completely betrayed by her biological mother and therefore ended up under the wing of Ye Wenjie. So those are the added characters that you just don't see in the original book. Then you also have altered or added events that did not go down the same way as in the book. For example, Shen Yufei's suicide. In the book, she's murdered by Pan Han. Also, you have Evans and Ye Wenjie meeting at Red Coast in current time when it's completely abandoned. They had this conversation in this heavenly lighting situation, right? That's so designed with that stylistic look and everything, color. That thing did not go down in the book for the narrative purpose, for bringing out these two characters' conflict and what they believe are actually different, and then also for the logic of the progress of the story. I think that scene is added for a very good reason, making a lot of sense. Other things such as Wang Miao's kid is actually a son in the book, but now they used a girl. It may just come down to they want to use a cute actress. Maybe she's cheap, maybe she can do it for free, who knows? Maybe she's the relative of somebody's relatives, somebody on crew. It could all be just for that reason. Then let's go to the fourth and fifth point about divide and conquer situation. During this adaptation process, what they haven't done well and I think could be improved on, and what has been done so well. So on the not so ideal side, the most complained about added character in this drama version is for sure Yang Rong's role, Mu Xing, the journalist who got murdered eventually. Her purpose is to bring out the two plans that the Trisolarian and the ETOs have designed for conquering Earth, and Pan Han's involvement, what he's done, what kind of extremist he is, also serving the function of being able to do what journalists do, digging out information, and eventually leading Dashi to find out that Ye Wenjie is for sure involved in this whole thing, and she is actually the big boss. Her existence is justified in that sense that she does serve multiple purposes for the narrative. But we can argue whether we can do a different role that can fulfill the same purpose. Can we write her so that she's not so annoying? And even though eventually you're like, okay, I forgive her because, you know, she kind of died for it, but it's very hard to say that you can fall in love with this role in any way. I think it's down to first the writing can be improved on so that she is not so annoying and she can function exactly the same. Also, I think that's down to the director. I think the director didn't do a good job of gauging what type of performance and style in this role is going to bring to the screen. Because Yang Rong is actually a pretty good actress. Given the right direction, she can give you anything. Because she's very risky a role due to Three Body is such a good and important IP. People are very overprotective. They don't want to see any tampering. So when she's a new role who doesn't exist in the book, shows up in that annoying way, everybody's alert and alarm gets triggered. Everybody's PTSD of bad adaptation gets triggered. Therefore, there's more emotional sort of like hatred that's directed at her. As compared to, say, if in an alternative universe, this is not such a big IP, then probably it wouldn't matter that much. Also, it's down to the fact that they used dubbing voice for this role. I don't know why. Maybe eventually when they went to post-production, she couldn't come to record her voice for whatever reason, because it did got made during the 4 years of pandemic, you know. Sometimes scheduling just don't match. So they picked a dubbing actress to dub her, and that voice, holy shit. There are leaked clips online of her own voice during the shooting of certain things before it got dubbed, and it feels so much more acceptable. The dubbed voice of her is so full of it, feeling better than everybody else. She's so condescending. You've reached this journalist. Do you have any information you want to share with me? Anybody talks like that, if in front of my face, I'm just gonna slap them. Stop bitching like that. This is probably the most failure added role for this drama. Had this role not been that annoying, then the coffee shop Shi Qiang scene after her death will make much more sense. The other role is Pan Han, played by this actor who is good looking enough, but his performance is probably one of the weakest of the main cast of this drama. So this not so good an actor guy who also got dubbed because his original voice I've heard, line delivery not good enough. So two got dubbed actors spend most of the time together. One is by default a crazy person. He's a terrorist, honestly. And the other is added annoying bitchy character. No wonder. Whenever it comes to the Pan Han part of the story, it's pretty hard to swallow. And unfortunately, they kind of concentratedly show up around the episode 8 and 9, where I think up to now, if you watch all 30, you would probably complain most about episode 8 and 9 because it got 2 episodes almost completely spent on those roles that you don't like. Then the Chen Xue role, the nuclear bomb girl. This is one thing I'm not sure of, whether she needs to be actually having that identity. You know, the ideal way would be actually she is just an assassin and she just took Chen Xue's identity. Chen Xue, this person may exist, but we actually never met her. And then she just faked her identity, or Ye Wenjie faked her identity so that she can stay around her. In a way, it will make more sense because it would be very weird for Ye Wenjie to actually use her biological related niece to serve as her hit woman. You know, she's really not a psychopath, Ye Wenjie. She's an idealist. She is a naive idealist who, with the limited knowledge and understanding and experience of life, made a decision in her 30s that actually affected the future of humanity. Later, in her later years, she actually regrets quite a lot and she understood the world is so much more complicated and she was so naive. Even though her sister and her mother both betrayed her in the most cruel way, it still would be very weird for her to use her niece in that way intentionally. And this drama didn't give you any space about after they've met, she showed up and saying, I'm your aunt. What happened? During the years, she founded her niece is going to MIT and what happened to her during MIT that eventually turned her from that to a hit woman. And there's nothing that got explained. Therefore, it becomes a bit weird, affecting your impression of Ye Wenjie role. Like, why she would be doing that? Ideally, I'd say they can take this out. They can completely just make her an assassin. Maybe she just took Chen Xue's identity, or maybe we just completely don't talk about there's an existence of a niece role. It's something that I'm not sure of, basically, whether it's a good thing or bad thing. So these are the things that I think the adaptation process haven't done so well. Then on the good side in the adaptation process, what they've made better. The first thing is definitely making all the flat, two-dimensional, two-person human camera serving plot purpose device not real human. Like lift them up from the 2-dimension and make everyone a real person. And then the second things are the smaller things. Body fluid between cells to lubricate and to make everything come together. For example, multiple times the daughter reminds Wang Miao of kid understanding simple things that actually inspires him. Oh, actually, yes. Why didn't I realize that earlier? It's a very classic device you see in a lot of crime and detective stories. This shows up multiple times in the drama that are not really in the book. In the book, the Wang Miao role kind of just like did it by himself. Like he is not really physics expert, but somehow he just figured it out because he's the main character. He needs to push the story forward. Whereas in this drama, he honestly is not really thinking in the right way, and then a little thing happens in his life that fills up that link, that small link that hooks everything together. Also, the creation, for example, of Xu Bingbing's role. A lot of people initially, when they saw her, they were very confused. They thought this is going to be a love interest, emotional line. Everybody is worried, PTSD again. But so fortunately, she is not. She's a classic way of adaptation from text to visual when you just have to show certain things on screen that cannot just be happening in the character's head. In a visual story, you can't just have Shiqiang standing there and then talk to himself and figuring all those things out. It would be boring, would not make sense for the visual adaptation. Therefore, they created Xu Bingbing to basically having a lot of process of Shiqiang figuring out things as a policeman, being pulled out and visually represented by two people talking to each other. You can argue whether that actually reduces Shiqiang's intelligence level because he has a part of the function that's being pulled out of him and being done by the other role. But then it makes perfect sense for visual production. Also, the whole joke on her being 10% carries through the whole story that eventually everybody calls her 10%. Us 10%. She refers to herself like that. When you have the Shiqiang having leukemia situation and when she starts to cry about that, because throughout the whole drama, she's the cool-headed, efficient machine of doing her job. But then you see like she is also a person and a girl and genuinely kind now have grown very close to Shiqiang as his subordinate, but also as colleague. You really start to feel, oh, this is a completely new role in her own, a really functioning character. And I really would hope in the Dark Forest, if they can bring her back in some way, I think audiences will enjoy that because they've all grown to like 10%. And then they've added a couple of scenes, like I said, such as Evans and Ye Wenjie's meeting. They've also very geniusly gave Ye Wenjie the final gift of her entering into the game for herself to see ETO's interpretation of what Trisolarian people look like and their culture. Give her that thing that she always worked for and idealized and dreamed about. Kind of crashing that in front of her, but also give her a closure. They also very intelligently let the Trisolarian people number 1379, the person who is listening to the noise, pretty much like Ye Wenjie's function. They gave people the opportunity to hear his story and why he responded, why he sent the message to Ye Wenjie. And they even managed to bring Ye Wenjie's reading of the message and his message into the same space, in the game space, to in a way making Ye Wenjie and number 1379 meet, which is, not really in the book either. They've cleverly brought out the Trisolarian story, but also not getting burdened with the fact that they have to create the look of the Trisolarian people that actually throughout 3 books nobody really know. Biologically, what kind of species do they look like? There's never any description. That's the masterful thing of the book, to leave that to your imagination. But for visual story, it's very hard. Like, how am I gonna represent a whole civilization when I can't visualize them? So for that part, the scriptwriter did such a good job, and I think that's the best way you can do it. There really is no alternative. And finally, the whole scene when it did get mentioned in the book in terms of insects never got conquered by humans. But it's not in a way that is so epic and, again, visually interesting. As the ending of a drama, the emotion, with the music, with the camera language, driving the whole story to the end, opening the new chapter. When Shiqiang, Wang Miao, Ding Yi got to this grass prairie that is very 三国桃园三结义, if you know that. You know what I mean? Pouring the wine to the insects, to the soils, and claiming we may be very far behind the Tricelarian people, but we should pay respect to our own ecology systems, insects, and look at them as inspiration because they never got conquered, no matter how hard we human tried. And it actually links back to 叶文洁, links back to Silent Spring, which is a book that's on pesticides. To the scriptwriter, they know how to tell a visual story. I think earlier on when this scene first got released in the trailer, everybody thought it was overkill. Because they don't know, right? Like, what are the things leading up to the moment? They haven't watched the whole drama. It's kind of weird to see Yu Hewei doing that. But actually, when you've watched the whole drama, when that moment happened, it's like, perfect choice. 5 points out of the way. Let's talk about the last part. The sixth part. 上价 Usually when you write an essay, in the last paragraph, you try to pull the whole thing up, you give it a little bit more meaning. That's what we're gonna do here. So I'm gonna talk about this part mainly in two angles. The first is, let's forget it's an adaptation of the famous Three-Body Problem series of books. Let's just look at it as a sci-fi drama. Its values to dramaland in China. Sci-fi is not something that can be easily done and done well. The nature of it entails a lot of money, extra work that you would need, extra departments you would need. Chinese dramaland, ever since I started this channel, which is 6 years ago, you really cannot say if there has ever been a hard sci-fi. Although Three-Body, given the first book, has very little sci-fi element, it's laying all the clues for it to explode in the most spectacular way in the second and third book. But if they don't lay the groundwork of the first book, nothing will work for the next two. Also, it does involve some of the theories of space travel, of all that science, solar, sending radio waves out into the space. Certain things are real and certain things aren't totally made up, such as that sun can be used as the amplifier of signals is totally made up actually by Liu Cixin, and you almost believe it is true. As a genre, whether it's in film and in television, sci-fi is like tiny in terms of how many dramas and how many productions can be done in this genre, and that can be qualified as hard sci-fi. Chinese dramaland, last 6 years, not even one hard sci-fi. I mean, the AI robot drama Qi Wei led is really just taking that as a character setup. Then it's still a very human story and it has little sci-fi element apart from, well, she plays a robot. If we want to be really strict about the hard sci-fi criteria, Three-Body is the only one. The fact that it exists, it got made and made to such a high standard and quality, almost as the single baby of a whole genre, is in itself a miracle and a huge achievement. It's gonna have a long-lasting life. It's not gonna be a drama that people watch it once and they're never gonna come back to. If you liked it, you're gonna come back to it. And it's gonna be very hard for any future things to actually top this drama, unless it's the same crew doing the second series and still doing it very well. So for the meaningful milestone of a particular genre of drama in the whole history of Chinese dramas, this drama has a very unique position that literally nothing can challenge. I have zero, honestly, confidence in Netflix and D&D to be able to... I just cannot wait to see, like I said in the first video, the Mulan version of the Cultural Revolution China done by Netflix. So the second thing, okay, this is a more sensitive point, but I do think it's worth bringing it out at the end of this long video. Liu Cixin wrote 3 books of Three-Body, 地球往事, the sort of past history of Earth. Then Dark Forest, where it talks mostly about the rule in his universe, about why civilizations don't contact each other, and the result of if you do, what would happen. Then the third book is 死神永生, Death End, I think that's the English translation, which talks about the ultimate fate of our universe due to civilization fighting against each other. For readers of the Three-Body books, most people would agree the second book probably is the most exciting book. The third book has too many crazy ideas, but then it is the first book that got Hugo Awards. I think among the 3 books, why people would pick the first one to get the awards is it is more exotic, because it contains a significant part of Cultural Revolution, which started in the mid mid-60s and pretty much ended in the mid-70s, but the limbo area kind of extends beyond both points a little bit more. And it's one of those most sensitive political period in China's history ever since the founding of People's Republic. And from an outsider's point of view, it's the most juicy part. Whenever you think in the opposite idea about this camp of the Free West, and that camp starting from Soviet Union to China to Communist Party to socialism, and that is the juicy part from the Westerner's perspective of the modern Chinese history. And the first book is heavily relied on what happened during the time that kind of decided the future for humanity. So in many ways, it's very ironic, I think, from a Westerner's perspective, and that makes the story juicy. So any type of description in the book that can be interpreted as a version of Chinese homegrown authors' criticism on that gets amplified. That's the book that gets an award, not the second or third, although the second usually is considered to be the best written one. That's totally fine, because everybody would have their own perspective, and we're all locked down, limited by our perspective, because we're all individuals. We all grow up in a specific time, social, whatever environment setting we cannot change. And it forms us. Think about Ye Wenjie as well, right? She gets created by science, by her both high education parents. Ever since she was a kid, she's in this high academic environment. She's herself a genius. Barely at the age of being able to get into contact with society, whole Cultural Revolution happened. That tragedy happened to her family. She gets moved to this place where she basically is working at hard labor, and then gets pulled into this locked down military facility. She never really had contact until she's in her 30s, in the little village when she gave birth to her daughter, and then she realized all the ideas she had of humanity was created in that enclosed on-book academic world that is losing contact with real world. And had she been in contact with the real world a lot more, she probably wouldn't press down on the button. Basically saying you have your own perspective due to where you come from, that's totally fine. But I think for Three Body to have a version adapted to screen from China, done by Chinese people from Tencent, and at such high quality, it basically offers the world a version that is Chinese perspective. It is written by a Chinese author, adapted by a Chinese team, and very faithful to the original spirit of this story. It's done, it's there. Therefore, any foreign adaptation such as Netflix that's gonna come later, it has something to refer to, or you can have comparison. You would not lose basically your voice. It would no longer be like if it didn't come out, it didn't get made, and then you have an American version made, but completely changing a lot of things. It's inevitable when it's done in that way, and you don't have a Chinese version as well done to stand there and say, you know, we have our version here. That will be a really big problem. For any specific nation, your own history, whether it's very close to you now or it's an ancient history, but if it's a very important part of history, whether it's good or bad in the general perspective of things, it is still very important to have the right of interpretation tightly grasped in your own hand. It's like your family's history. You have the best say in what goes on, and other people can have their opinion, but your opinion needs to be heard. It needs to be there. It needs to be quite visible and everybody can see. You cannot lose your voice. You're not making a mark, because if you don't, other people is going to come in and take your position, and soon enough, like sooner than you realize, your own history is going to get erased. It's so easy. People are so forgetful, and you also see that in the second book and the third book, when humans so easily forgot how bad Trisolarian people actually are, and given the opportunity, they will be ruthless and taking everything. Humans forget about that in the second book and caused a huge problem. It says a lot about human nature. So Three Body is very deep in that analysis of human nature. So basically what I'm saying is, because of Three Body being such a Chinese story, written by a Chinese author, growing so out of the contemporary Chinese soil, it needs to have a Chinese interpretation. Yeah, no matter how many other interpretations there are out there in the world, the Chinese version needs to exist and needs to have a big presence. It cannot give up that position and let every other people just, dress it up however they like. It applies to every nation. Better that they have their own version of the story, easily visible. That's very big 上价值. Like the biggest 价值 from a Chinese perspective that this version of the drama can have. And I think it has achieved that. So, that's a long ass video. I know it's not gonna be good for algorithm for a long video on YouTube to this level, but hey, who cares? It's 3 body. It deserves special treatment in every sense. Thank you for watching Out New X. I'll see you in my next video. Meanwhile, live long and happy drama watching.